Know yourself better. It's the answer to everything that you want to create or everything that you want to get rid of. So you want more money, know yourself better. You want a loving relationship, know yourself better. You want a happier life, know yourself better. You want better relationships with people, with your parents, with friends, better job, know yourself better. This is the key that opens every door.
Welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered, where we go beyond the diagnosis and start listening to the deeper messages our bodies, symptoms, and seasons of life may be trying to show us. Today's episode is a little different, but such an important conversation because we're talking about healing through the lens of nature, rhythm, and reconnection, and how much can shift when we stop forcing ourselves to live in constant productivity and start honoring the seasons within and around us. My guest today is Anni Eza. Anni is a master healer, mental health specialist, shadow priestess, ego death doula, teacher, and co-founder of Seeds of Bliss. After more than 10,000 healing sessions and certifications in over 10 modalities, she created Awakening the Seeds, a deep process designed to help people remember who they are beneath fear, conditioning, and survival patterns. Her work lives in the space between life and death, light and darkness, helping others hold both with skill and compassion. In this conversation, we explore what it really means to heal seasonally, why spring can be such a powerful time for growth and transformation, how living out of sync with nature can affect the nervous system, and why true healing is less about forcing change and more about creating the right conditions for it. We also talk about breath, slowing down, listening to the body, and learning to better understand yourself so you can move through life with more awareness, alignment, and ease. As always, the content shared on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. This episode is a beautiful reminder that healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you are underneath everything that has pulled you away from yourself. So now let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Anni Eza. Hello and welcome to Anni. Super excited for this. This is definitely a different topic and one that I've incorporated into my program. So let's just start by having you introduce yourself, your story, how'd you get here, what do you do, all that good stuff.
First of all, hi everyone. Hi Lindsie. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your vibe and your welcoming attitude because it's very important. Okay, where to start with my story? It's a pretty long story. My life has been like a movie script so far, so I have never been bored. Okay. First of all, I want to open with the statement that I never intended to become a healer. It wasn't the plan. I have never imagined myself being a healer, let alone a healer with 10,000 plus hours of experience under their belt, which is my current healing experience. But life has a wild imagination, definitely wilder than ours, and also very distorted sense of humor sometimes. So, what brought me here was my own healing journey, which has started about 15 years ago. I wasn't suffering from health issues. My life was good. Everything was into place. I was happy. I was content. But there was like a huge percentage of myself that I felt was dormant, not fully activated, and I couldn't access it. So I stepped into my healing journey just out of curiosity. I wanted to access that part of my soul, to open that door and build that bridge so I can reclaim it, I can embody it. This is where it all started. And my healer back then insisted that I should be trained to become a healer. So she was seeing something in me that I wasn't aware of, obviously. But I went into my first healing training just out of curiosity because I love experimenting and trying new things out. And then things started falling into place without any effort. I didn't have to push through. And this is proof, if you're seeking any proof, that when this is your door, it opens almost automatically just by your presence. So this was the story about me becoming a healer. But before that, I have been also an elementary school teacher for 18 years. And there's another funny side story behind my teaching job. I became a teacher because I found adults boring. They weren't playful enough for my taste. They weren't pleasant enough for my taste. So I thought it was a good idea to work with kids because they're coming straight from the source. They're very playful. They're experimenting. They're not attached to the outcome. They do not hesitate to try over and over again when it's something new. So it filled my cup in a very different way than my relationships with adults did. And along the way, I found a way to infuse this playfulness and experimentation in my relationship with adults through the healing part. So this is my story pretty much.
That's awesome. I mean, the kids part that you mentioned, it made me think because, so I don't have any kids myself, but I have two little nieces that I just adore. And so we don't live, we live on, no, I'm just about as far south as you can go in the States, and they're about as far north, but I go see them like every 3 to 4 months because yes, like it's just so amazing watching them explore the world and like seeing it through their eyes, like even with, Christmas, recently, just the thought of them still thinking Santa is real, like it's amazing just watching them grow and learn and explore the world, from a different view. So I can appreciate what you're saying there about the kids. So you talk a lot about living in a rhythm with nature rather than pushing against it. From your perspective as a healer, what does seasonal healing actually mean? And as we enter spring, why is that such a powerful time for transformation?
First of all, everything is seasonal. Everything in the universe, in our lives, in our bodies, even in our behavior is organized in circles, cycles. So, unfortunately, we have adopted a very linear way of living in the name of productivity, which is very distorted again, because if you drop dead because you're burned out, you're not productive, no matter how hard you try. But we keep ignoring those red flags, those notifications from our body, our nervous system, and the planet too, which is very interesting. We stay very committed to our blind spots, which is very impressive. And that makes me wonder what would happen if we were so committed to understand who we really are and how we really function. That would change the world, not only our lives individually, but also the collective reality of humanity. What I found out, because it wasn't like divine knowledge or some magical download. I was observing nature since I was a child because I was brought up in a house with a big garden. And my grandmas and my dad were green thumbs. So we had all kinds of plants around, herbs, vegetables, flowers, trees, you name it, everything. I was very connected to nature and I was observing the cycles closely. But at the time, I couldn't name it. I couldn't understand why this was so mesmerizing for me. As I was growing up and as I was going further in my own healing journey, I understood that what kept me there in awe by observing the nature was that I could recognize those cycles on the inside. I could observe the needs of my body, my emotional needs, and I could understand that they are so different during every season. For instance, winter, which I hated when I was younger, but now I really love it. Because I have learned to slow down, to be patient. So winter is about slowing down, being patient with all the darkness that is on the surface. And by darkness, I do not only mean the darkness of the cycle between night and day. Also, existential darkness is very present in winter. So winter is one of the darkest periods in our life. But it's also the void, the womb of creation, the resting period we need in order to sprout back in spring.
Yeah.
In winter, the whole nature is asleep. So we need more rest, more hours of sleep, slower rhythms. And I think it's very impressively distorted that we keep the same pace in our work schedule through every season. And we are failing to open our eyes to see that this doesn't make us productive. It costs to the industries that sacrifice people's lives in the name of productivity billions of dollars. They are just failing to see that.
Yeah. So because winter, kind of like you mentioned, it might be a time for, to kind of maybe go inward and do some more, resting during that time, reflecting. What then shifts kind of energetically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, as we start moving into that springtime?
We get naturally energized and activated because our system is waking up. And we have been resourced because of the deep rest we have enjoyed during winter, if we are living according to the cycles of our nature and nature in general. So then we have nourished ourselves and we have nourished our seeds of consciousness, ideas, goals, everything could be a seed. But you have to give it time in order for it to sprout. You cannot go there and poke it and rush it. It has its own rhythm, which is also known as timing in human lives. And timing is not about fully surrendering and being passive. It's about surrendering enough to let the flow of life do its job, because there are so many things that have to fall into place so that our goals can be achieved and our wishes can be manifested. But we also acknowledge that we have agency and we have to take some action that needs to happen.
Yeah. How do you see this showing up in people's nervous systems?
When there's no balance, everything is linear. Their nervous systems are like iron. You know the iron we use for the clothes? Like that. I can imagine like the nervous system is not that wonderful tree-shaped structure, but it's more like a 2D drawing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not alive anymore because it is screaming and yelling and trying to convey messages and bring forward information, and we're like hashing it.
Yeah.
So imagine if you talk to me and I always hash you and tell you this is not the right time, no, I can't right now. You will eventually stop talking to me
Mm-hmm.
because you will be disappointed. You will not be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my 90-day program, I focus on seasonal eating, so I think that's also where we align a lot, because and the more we talk, it just makes more sense as well, because like I talk a lot about winter, and when you eat seasonally, you have to think there's not all those fruits and vegetables that are, as plentiful in the spring and summer, maybe even early fall, months. Um, and so if we kind of follow that our body's natural rhythm, then yes, we can focus more on truly healing, settling back in during those colder, darker, months. So that makes a lot of sense. Even yeah, it just gives me a different perspective, even on what I've been doing with my clients, for sure.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. And you brought the nutritional aspect forward, which is very interesting because it reminded me that as a child, I never ate, like by choice, naturally, by intuition, I never ate fruit or vegetables that were not part of the season we were going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I would never eat an apple during summer, no matter how good it looked. It was
Mm-hmm.
like repelling for me. And it's still the same. So seasonal nutrition is very interesting also
Yeah.
because it helps the body align with the season naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately, with the modernization of everything and the convenience of everything, we've gotten out of that. And then it's evolved into packaged nutrition. I kind of say that with quotes because yeah, anything out of a package is not really nutrition. Um, and so yeah, we've kind of gotten away from that, and if you really just take a step back, and that's a big part of what I do as well with as I start teaching my clients how to eat seasonally, yes, you're resetting the nervous system and focusing more on, okay, what is going on here? Why have I been, so focused on certain foods for all of these years? And then they start realizing how much better they feel, along the way too, right? Yes.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. It's a big reset. Um, So yeah, I mean, in the beginning of the year, I feel like there's kind of the reset mentality a little bit too, but I definitely feel like spring um, kind of brings that about as well for a lot of women. Starting over. Obviously, there's new growth and the snow. If you're in an area with snow is melting and flowers are blooming, yes, all that good stuff. And like we mentioned, the fruits and vegetables start growing again. So how can we approach spring healing in a way that's gentle and supportive instead of just, another form of maybe like self-pressure or self-criticism?
Oh no, healing is not pressure or criticism. If we go that way, we are totally going towards the wrong direction. Healing is
Mhm.
not about fixing someone, it's about helping them remember who they truly are beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear.
Mm.
And I have encountered so many people coming after having terrible experiences with healers or mental health specialists. And this is so frustrating because this reveals another issue beneath that we as practitioners, healers, mental health specialists, guide, whatever you want to call yourself, we should also do the work. And by the work, I mean not self-healing, for sure. This is not working. This is an egoistic trap. So if someone says, I do self-healing, just run away for your own good. But we should also see into the chair of the receiver. It is very important so that we are a clean slate every time we are in front of a client of ours, so that we do not risk any projections, because they come here to understand themselves better, not to get confused with our patterns, thought forms, or trauma, our perspective on life. So it's not about pressuring at all. It's not about tools at all. This is not my kind of healing. It's only about helping you understand in a better, deeper, and more conscious way how you really function in terms of body, mind, emotions. What are your trigger points? What are your blind spots? How you can be more conscious of those things so that they stop controlling your lives. And the entrance, when we are in spring, to go that way is to understand where you want to go. What are your goals for the next season? What do you want to see manifesting in your life? What would you like to experience? And that could be absolutely everything and anything. There are no limitations because we are creating our own lives, not the distorted law of attraction way, like you think of it, like you're obsessed with it and it manifests. No, you can think of anything as much as you want. But if your conditioning subconsciously says that you can't have that, you will not have that, even if you spend hours thinking of it every day. So we clear all the blocks and help you manifest whatever you want, or even better, create.
Yes,
whatever
exactly. Yeah. I love that too, what you said, even just about kind of reconnecting with your body and figuring out, getting back to who you are, because I think especially a lot of women with PCOS, feel so disconnected from their bodies. Yes. And you've probably seen it in your practice, even with other conditions, and that's super important. I mean, I was guilty of it for years. I ignored, all the things until I couldn't ignore them anymore. Um, so what are, kind of keeping with that theme, what are kind of 1 to 2 simple practices that you would recommend that maybe somebody could use today to begin reconnecting, with their inner self and kind of finding that inner rhythm going into spring?
The most powerful and profound practices are always the simplest ones, the ones where overlooked, like, this is nothing, this is too easy. And they are working so well, not just because they're powerful, but because they're also very easily integrated in our everyday lifestyle. So it's not about meditating 2 hours a day. That's never gonna work. You will either drop out or you will commit suicide. And neither of them is a desirable outcome. So first of all, slow down and observe your body, observe how it reacts. When you decide to do something, when you engage with something, what does your body really need? For instance, I will give an example of my own. There are periods of time that I cannot watch series or movies at all because I spend many hours every day on my laptop screen because I work online with clients from all over the world. So then I cannot take in any more stimuli through my eyesight. But I feel my system craving for a good book, which is gentler, and it activates different parts of the brain. So just feel into your needs. What is your body asking? And a second practice could be observe your breath. And remember to breathe deeply. It's not sexy. It's not beautiful because your belly will be expanding a lot. And maybe you don't like that. But it's for your highest and best in so many ways. It is massaging the internal organs. And there are studies that prove that about 70 or even more percent of the serious illnesses we are suffering from could be avoided if we were breathing properly, like deeply. And this is our natural breath. This is our natural breathing style. We breathe like that until about 11 or 12 years old, but then anxiety kicks in, conditioning kicks in. Lots of things are happening. The lessons, what others are thinking about me, how should I look, and stuff like that. And then our breathing becomes more shallow. And this, of course, has a cost on our health, on our rhythm. Anxiety also, shallow breathing triggers stress. So if you're stressed and you want to self-signal the sense of safety, just breathe deeply.
Yeah. I know I start my program like that actually. Yeah, like you said, it's so simple. It really is. It sounds so simple, but uh, so many people ignore that because it sounds so simple. But really, it's what our body needs. Thinking back to our ancestors that ate seasonally, that lived seasonally, and weren't stimulated by all the things going on in the world, and screens and stresses and all of the stuff, and they were able to actually just focus on what is out there, what is in the world, and like you said, kind of take a minute, observe, breathe, get curious. So I really appreciate that. It's very beautiful. Um, so spring, yes, it's associated with, growth and new beginnings, but sometimes that can stir up some old emotions, maybe some resistance to changes. So what emotional or energetic themes do you commonly see surface during this season?
Resistance is a universal topic throughout the seasons because we can resist pretty much anything. We can resist rest, growth, change, life, self-awareness, our dark parts, our blind spots, the next step, everything. So it is a very common topic, and also fear. So feelings, I think, are not associated to the topics, to the issues we are encountering in our healing path, because they are universal. The same feeling can be triggered by different incidents, by different situations, different experiences. But spring is a very interesting period of time because it shows us if we have done a good job replenishing and resourcing ourselves during the winter. So if you get into spring and you feel depleted, then you haven't been resting enough during the winter.
Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. So how, if we find that going into spring, like you said, and you don't feel rested and ready for, growth and new beginnings, how can we work through that?
This is a misalignment because the natural season, which is spring, is not aligned with the inner season, which is still winter. So, yeah, you can't skip a season. You can skip night's sleep. It will catch up with you and kick you big time. So it needs caution and good care and an experienced guide. Because the first time we navigate an issue, misalignment, and this is a big misalignment, we really need to pay attention so that we learn how to navigate misalignments in general. It's not about punishing ourselves or judging ourselves. We are always doing our best with what we have and what we know at any given moment. So it needs guidance and good care. And it's a very precious lesson to understand how can I navigate misalignments, because misalignments will happen. It's not like we will be at a Zen state, living our lives totally untroubled, in absolute peace. There's no such thing. Unless if you're dead, then there's so much peace.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we have to learn how to just work through that and handle that, and adjust to things better, because that's the reality of life, right? There's always going to be something.
A challenge.
For sure. Yeah. So, we both focus a lot on healing ourselves, and with our clients, of course, as well. But it's not about forcing any changes, and kind of like you just mentioned, kind of creating the right conditions, for it, though, right? So if you could leave listeners with one intention or reflection to carry with them into spring, what would that be?
Know yourself better. It's the answer to everything that you want to create, or everything that you want to get rid of. So you want more money, know yourself better. You want a loving relationship, know yourself better. You want a happier life, know yourself better. You want better relationships with people, with your parents, with friends, better job, know yourself better. This is the key that opens every door.
I love that. That's a really good way to kind of wrap it up. Yeah, I mean, just listen, and that starts with, I think, listening, right? To, listening to your body. And like we said, pausing and starting to really listen to what your body is trying to tell you, and maybe it's been trying to tell you for a very long time. Right? Yeah. Awesome. Well, I love this conversation. What is there a way that people can connect with you and find you? Of course, I'll put everything in the show notes as well, but I always like you to say it out loud.
They can find me at our website, seedsofbliss.life, or in social media under the handle of Seeds of Bliss.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you so much. This is a very important conversation, especially, going into spring. And of course, I feel like we could probably do this with every season for sure. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of PCOS Unfiltered. I hope this conversation with Anni gave you a fresh perspective on healing, especially as we move into a new season. One of the biggest takeaways from this episode is that healing does not need to be harsh, forced, or rooted in pressure. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is slow down enough to notice what our body has been trying to tell us all along. I also love Anni's reminder that if we want to change our lives, we have to know ourselves better. That self-awareness becomes the doorway to everything. Deeper healing, better choices, more alignment, healthier relationships, and a more grounded connection to who we are truly. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, take a screenshot, and tag us on social media or leave a review so more women can find these conversations and begin their own healing journey. You can connect with Anni through Seeds of Bliss at seedsofbliss.life, and I'll be sure to include her information in the show notes for you as well. I'm sending you so much love, and as always, remember, your body is not broken, your symptoms are not random, and healing often begins when you stop fighting yourself and start listening more deeply. I'll see you on the next episode of PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, heal, thrive.